Today's video is going to be about my experience so far with long COVID. In March 2020, I got COVID for the first time, but I didn't get long COVID until I got COVID again in 2022. I do have some explaining I need to do before I get to that though. I was born chronically ill, and during puberty, my health did get a bit worse. It got significantly worse, though, literally overnight in 2014 after what may have been a virus. I don't even know. As a child, I was diagnosed with spina bifida occulta, and I was also diagnosed after 2014 with things such as GERD, and I got a clinical diagnosis of endometriosis. What I didn't know is I also had things such as mast cell activation syndrome and Ehlers-Danlos since birth, but none of my doctors knew it existed until 2022 and 2023, so there was no way I could have been tested, let alone diagnosed with it yet. During that time frame after I got COVID in March 2020 and before I got long COVID in 2022, I was dancing just at home on my own because the studios in my area, of course, weren't open anymore. And I eventually found a professional ballet dancer online who was offering video lessons, and I was taking weekly lessons with her. Prior to COVID, I was doing theater, and I had been working with a voice teacher who came to my home every week since 2017. That had to be switched over to video. I was doing physical therapy over video. Because all these things were moved over to video, that gave me the opportunity to start taking classes online with Nomen to study animation and visual effects. And in 2021, I started up Kung Fu, which is something I had been wanting to do almost my entire life, but I just didn't have time for it. I did have to modify things, and there were some things I just straight up can't do, but I made a ton of progress really fast. During this time, I was also taking walks pretty much every day with my friend for an hour. That was partially uphill. There were only some times that I had to miss due to my health. I did eventually start needing to use a cane and taking some breaks during the walk, but I was still able to do it. Then comes June of 2022 when my wife and I literally started getting symptoms of COVID at the same exact time. And I have never been the same since. I just knew that that was going to happen to me. I had been studying COVID since January of 2020, and prior to that, I already knew that post-viral illnesses existed. My acute infection, by the way, that time lasted, I think it was either a week or a week and a half. Some of the symptoms that I had during my acute infection just never went away, and I also developed new symptoms over time. While I was actively sick, I had a video visit with a doctor, and she told me that smell and taste issues don't happen with COVID anymore. I knew she was wrong, and a couple days later, I started developing smell and taste issues, and it still has not completely gone away. I either developed ME/CFS or it got worse. My doctors didn't seem to know about it until 2024. And I only knew about the very severe category at that point in time, which, by the way, the very severe category, most people just totally ignore it. But yeah, I didn't think I was bad enough then because I'm not in the very severe category. I will say that I experienced PEM prior to getting long COVID, which most people in the ME/CFS community seem to say that PEM is specific to ME, and a lot of doctors say that it's specific to ME, but some people say that it's not specific to ME, so I don't know. I don't want to give incorrect information out, which is why I'm giving this whole explanation. I either developed gastroparesis or it got worse because, again, my doctors didn't know about gastroparesis until 2022. I just know that prior to that I did have gut motility issues and it got worse. It was really hard, and it's still hard for me to deal with that. I lost one of my autism safe foods and was also just safe in general for my MCAS and my GERD and everything, which is apples and applesauce. It doesn't matter if it's cooked, I can't have it anymore. It gets stuck in the upper left of my stomach for at least 8 hours, and food is not supposed to take that long to digest. It hurts. It causes a lot of nausea. You can kind of see a little lump if I eat it. And it's hard because the applesauce also used to help my dysautonomia since I stopped tolerating electrolytes. That's not the only food that I have lost, that's just the one that probably has impacted me the most. I also started developing migraines, which can last for days at a time. It does tend to fluctuate in intensity, but when I am at my worst, all I can do is lay in bed with the lights off and hope that it goes away, and the only thing I can handle listening to is some ASMR, and only some. So there's certain creators that I tend to gravitate towards, such as Ocean's ASMR, which does kind of help a little bit get the edge off of the pain, but only a little bit. It does not get rid of the pain for me. It just helps it make it slightly more bearable. The only other thing that seems to kind of help is Tylenol, but it's hit or miss whether or not the Tylenol will help, and I don't like taking it every single time I have a migraine, because I get migraines so often. I am limited what I can take, which is tricky because I have had reactions to medication with my MCAS since I was at least 2 years old. My wife and I both noticed that when I do have migraines, my ability to think gets worse, and I get pain here usually, and then I'll get pain either like this or on the other side. It'll flip-flop. My pre-existing dysautonomia got worse, and I have not been able to get through a ballet bar ever since then entirely. I have tried, and I got so frustrated that I would just try to push through it. I don't do that anymore because my cardiologist and the physical therapist that I used to have told me that I could cause damage to my heart if I push through that, and to please stop. And it's also really bad in the short term, because when I tried, one time I ended up developing a low-grade fever, really intense nausea. I got really shaky and unstable and couldn't stand anymore. I started seeing things moving, and it looked like spiders were crawling on the floor, except there were no spiders on the floor, and my wife was there to see that there was nothing moving. I was just really overdoing it. So please, do not push through heart palpitations. You cannot talk yourself out of it, even if you try. Just don't. About 3 months after I had COVID, I developed telogen effluvium, which I was very nervous about that. That's another thing that I just knew was going to happen to me. My wife developed it a month prior to me, and we ended up losing over half of the hair that we had at the time. And although my wife's hair has since regained thickness, and if anything is more thick than it was prior, mine has not completely recovered. It has improved, but it's not back to what it used to be. I know it doesn't help that I no longer tolerate the iron supplements that I used to prior to getting COVID that time. But I had only started taking those iron supplements in 2020, so I also had changes with my hair itself, and it still is an adjustment because my hair suddenly got straighter out of the blue. My individual strands of hair got thinner and way more fragile, and my hair started getting knotted so extremely easily. And I ended up in 2024 losing a lot of hair due to that, because I had to cut out a whole bunch of knots. I have since then figured out how to manage it, and that has gotten a little bit better, so I'm able to deal with it now, but it did take a long time to figure out how to do that. And if you want a separate video just on the hair stuff, please let me know. My pre-existing pelvic floor dysfunction got significantly worse, to the point where that's one of the reasons I had to stop taking classes with Nomen online. I actually ended up blacking out during one of my classes because the pain was so intense, and that would just keep happening, where I would just be stuck on the floor or just stuck, unable to move, unable to function. And when you're in that level of pain, you can't do anything. You can't pay attention to class, you can't draw, you can't function. And let me put it this way, I have had my foot stuck under a Toyota Highlander tire, legit stuck, unable to move my foot. That broke two of my toes and put my joints out of place. And that pain is nothing compared to the pain I get with the pelvic floor dysfunction. I'm probably forgetting something, but hopefully you guys get the idea that my health got very suddenly worse, and things continued to go downhill overall for a while. In March of 2023, I had to stop working, which I wasn't even doing a lot. I was cantering at 2 churches about once a week, sometimes more, especially if it was around Easter or Christmas. But because of how unpredictable my symptoms are and they just smack me at random, sometimes that would happen right before Mass or during Mass. I can't just decide when it's going to happen. Mass is on a specific schedule, so that really sucks, because people might see me functional in some moments, but it's all over the place. Through all this, in early 2024, I ended up becoming an ambulatory wheelchair user. I actually needed it prior to that, but it takes time to wait to get the wheelchair, and there's a whole process getting it covered by insurance. And my general practitioner that I had prior to the one I have now didn't know how to get a custom wheelchair through insurance. She only knew how to get a standard adult size wheelchair, which I do not fit in. I am only 4'7". She retired mid-2023, so I had to switch to a new general practitioner who I have now, and they actually knew what they were doing. After that, I had to get approved by occupational therapy, and then after that, insurance had to approve me, so it is a process that takes a while. I am extremely lucky that I was even able to do this, because a lot of people don't even make it through getting approved by their doctor. Insurance only approved of it because I can't always even walk, let alone stand in my own home. They don't approve it if you only need it outside of the house. I do want to emphasize that I am an ambulatory wheelchair user, which I keep hearing that the majority of wheelchair users are. I'm not sure if that's true, but ambulatory is going to mean different things for different people. For me, that means that sometimes I can walk, sometimes I can even dance, but other times I can't even stand if I try without collapsing to the floor. And sometimes I can't even sit up in bed with assistance. In April of 2023, I stopped doing physical therapy because my insurance decided to stop covering it, and I switched to someone who is a personal trainer and nutritional coach who specializes in Ehlers-Danlos, and I do that over video twice a week and have been doing it since then. And this is one of the things that has helped me the most out of anything. Most of the work we do is either from bed or the floor. She is extremely accommodating and understanding, and if I have to miss, she is also very understanding. I am so lucky. Remember how earlier I said I probably was going to forget one of my symptoms? I did. My Ehlers-Danlos got worse after I got COVID in 2022, so my joints became way more unstable and just weak. I started having so much of a problem that my elbow would sublux just opening the door to my apartment, which is really bad. I have since made significant improvement thanks to my personal trainer. I'm still bad. I'm still a problem. But I have improved so much. Slowly, but I have improved. I had worked with 3 different physical therapists prior to that. The second one actually made me worse, and I got injured from the exercises that he had me do. And the third one, we started reaching a wall because although she specialized in ballet dancers and she used to be the physical therapist, I believe, for New York City Ballet and a lot of Broadway dancers, and she specialized in generalized hypermobility, I have Ehlers-Danlos, which is different from generalized hypermobility. It's not the same thing. Around mid-2023, my migraine suddenly went away, and I'm not entirely certain as to why, but I did move out of a moldy apartment, so I don't know if that contributed to it. Like, it was so extremely moldy. But yeah, unfortunately, the migraines came back because I got COVID again mid-2023. That infection made me become mostly housebound and often stuck in bed and has ruined my life. Not only did a bunch of my issues that I had previously with long COVID get worse, or like I said, the migraines came back, but my ME/CFS got a lot worse, and my MCAS got so severe that I needed to become mostly housebound for my safety at the request of my medical care team. I was getting anaphylaxis quite literally at least once a day, pretty much, if not more. And my doctors were questioning how I was still alive, which is not something that you want to hear from your doctors. And they said if I didn't do something about it soon, that I was at risk for stroke, heart attack, paralysis, or worse. Sometimes with anaphylaxis, I have such high blood pressure. The highest I have seen on record, at least, was 242 for the systolic, and I can also get really low pulse. The lowest I've seen on record was 32, and by the way, my blood pressure monitor had been checked with my grandfather's cardiologist to make sure that it was accurate. I'll get a whole bunch of other symptoms with anaphylaxis too, but some of the more concerning ones include difficulty swallowing, difficulty breathing, or inability to breathe. The food stuff is easier for me to manage currently, but the environmental triggers are what I struggle with more, especially where I live. One of the things I react to the most is, I don't know if I can say it, but I live in California. and especially in the Bay Area, it's everywhere. It's so hard to avoid just even leaving my house. I also get anaphylaxis, but not quite as severe, but still really bad, from things such as poor air quality, especially if it's being caused by fires. And again, I live in California. I also get anaphylaxis from certain fireplace smoke, and where I live, people are so obsessed with their fireplaces that this one neighbor will even use it when it's 85 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and one of my friends started calling her the fireplace lady. And yeah, it's terrible. I get anaphylaxis from a lot of cleaning products, which became a problem because certain medical facilities use cleaning products that give me anaphylaxis. I also get anaphylaxis from certain perfumes, scented plugins, certain sunscreens on other people, and a whole bunch of other things. And it's so hard to manage. Whenever someone goes out of the house, I am in my room. I have the AC/heater vent covered. I have insulation at the bottom of my door, and I wait a couple of minutes. And we have air purifiers running in the house at all times, including one in my room. We have one in the family room. There's one in my mother's room. Thankfully, we already had the air purifiers prior to this because of the frequent fires where we live. In 2024, I did find a respirator that helps, which is the Draeger Explorer 1950 N95, but I do still get anaphylaxis from certain things, especially people smoking certain things. It does at least usually block out fireplace smoke, so ever since I had that respirator, I'm at least able to get out a little bit more, but it is still a risk. I'm also going to be completely honest in that the Draeger Explorer 1950 N95 doesn't fit my face properly. It's made for someone with a bigger face than mine, so although I am able to get a seal with it, in order to do so, I have to smush it up into my eyes, and it obstructs my vision, which is not ideal. So there are times that I just can't wear it because I need to be able to see sometimes. So in that case, then I'll wear the Can99 in the kid size. That is so much more comfortable. It fits me so well, but even on the box for Can99, it says that it's not made for gases and aerosols. It's only made to protect you against things such as virus and mold. So I will still wear the Can99 because protecting myself and others from virus is also extremely important, but yeah. Something else that helps me is I started taking Claritin daily in 2023. Prior to that, I was taking it here and there, but I wasn't taking it consistently, and that consistency is what makes a difference. I didn't notice any difference though for my GI symptoms until I started taking it at least twice a day at the request of my doctor, which, by the way, this is not medical advice. This is what I was told to do by my doctor. Everyone is probably going to be different. Please check with your doctor. My nausea started to improve. It didn't go away. I still have GI issues, but it improved, which I'll take. And there are certain foods that I either stopped reacting to or have less of a reaction to now, and it's safe enough for me to eat. There's still a whole list of things that I can't have, which is sad, but I got things such as Japanese curry back. I got vegan donuts back from a local donut place that I had stopped tolerating due to long COVID, and it's amazing. For a while, the Claritin was actually getting rid of my bumps and hives until I had gotten COVID in 2023, and now it doesn't keep it completely away anymore. It helps, but I still get bumps and hives now. Another big thing that helped me is I realized that I had been reacting to onion, which was happening prior to getting long COVID, but it took a long time to figure that one out because onion is in everything. It's everywhere. And there are certain kinds of onions that I react to more than others, which also took a long time to figure out because a lot of times things just say onion and don't specify the type. But I started getting anaphylaxis from certain kinds of onions, so that unfortunately started making it a little bit easier to figure out. In 2025, something very big happened. My wife and I went to Japan, and this wasn't just for fun. The whole point of this trip is because we might be moving overseas in the future, and we needed to see whether or not I could handle it with my health, whether or not I could even handle getting through the airport, the plane, Japan itself, since that's one of our options. I know there's people that move places without ever being there before, but I did not want to do that. I didn't know what to expect. I prepared for the worst. Thankfully, I made it over, and my health was so much better that I felt like I had some of my life back. And it wasn't just the food or the water, because I brought my own water from home that I was drinking the first 2 weeks, and I was bringing food from home, and I also eat food at home that's from Japan. I can make a whole separate video about this, but my worst environmental triggers are extremely rare in Japan, but extremely common where I live in California. So I wasn't having anaphylaxis anywhere near as much. That meant that my ME/CFS was also better, and I only had a migraine one day the entire month I was there. And the only day I had a migraine was when there was temporary poor air quality. I do want to be transparent. It wasn't sunshines and rainbows. I did still need my wheelchair some of the time, and there were some things I had to completely miss out on, either because I physically couldn't get out of the car or because it wasn't wheelchair accessible. There were times I still had anaphylaxis. It was just less than home. I did end up needing to extend the trip because of anaphylaxis that I had on the plane and in the airport. So, yeah, it still wasn't perfect, but I was so much more functional. By the way, it is extremely important for me to mention I did not travel by train at all. I only traveled by car and the Disney Ambassador Hotel bus. We drove all the way around from Narita through Osaka, including throughout the countryside. When I came home, though, immediately when we landed, my health was worse again, and people kept trying to tell me online, oh, it's because of the food in America. No, I didn't eat anything yet, and my health was already worse, and my wife's was too. I didn't drink anything yet. I could smell the difference in the air, because I can actually smell that the air is bad where I live. I did get temporarily worse again when I came home from Japan. I ended up having 11 cavities, and my GI issues got worse, which my dentist and my GI doctor both say it was probably due to that, because once I got that taken care of, my GI issues got better again. Which, that's another thing I forgot to mention, that my teeth got significantly worse after I got COVID in 2023. I started getting chipped teeth. I have a partially cracked tooth, and yeah, suddenly I got all these cavities that I didn't experience before. I take care of my teeth better than the majority of people. I even use prescription toothpaste that I've been using since, it must have been at least 2022, if not 2021. Ehlers-Danlos does put you at risk for dental issues, but I didn't have this level of dental issues until getting COVID in 2023. In July of 2025, I lost my bunny, and I still miss him so much. That was rough on me, not just mentally, but physically. That was a lot on my ME/CFS, and I had a huge crash almost a week later. My wife decided that we should go to Disneyland because Disney theme parks are one of my biggest special interests that I have had my entire life, and she thought maybe it would be good to get our minds off of our bunny, at least for a bit, and that maybe it would help us. And it was also during a time that kids were going back to school, so it was supposed to be a lot less busy, and it was. It was very empty. Here's where things went bad, though. The day before we left, I couldn't really help with packing anymore because I started having anaphylaxis to lavender essential oil hand sanitizer that my mother had dumped down the sink. My wife immediately had an asthma attack when she came home from work that day as soon as she walked in the door. So we assumed that she was just unwell from that. And she also really pushed through it, which isn't good. She had to help me not only pack, but we also had to get stuff out of the family room and living room and into our bedroom, because the other reason why we went on this trip is because we couldn't be in the house since my mother had termites that were in her bedroom, and I didn't want our stuff potentially smelling of the stuff that they used on the termites. My wife also has an autoimmune disease. She had a post-viral illness since 2017 and also has long COVID, so we just assumed that she was unwell from all of that. We proceeded with driving to Disney, and after just one day in the park, the next day I started getting a fever, and I was like, oh no, I need to go back to the hotel immediately and test for COVID. And sure enough, we both tested, and my test came back so quickly positive that the control line wasn't even there yet. Rapid tests are not the most accurate thing. They're known for having a lot of false negatives. So that's really bad. How I think we got COVID that time is that my wife had some medical appointments that she had started in August where she had to unmask for them. And although she did request the person to wear a mask, I don't know if they wear one outside of her appointments, and she wasn't able to get first appointment of the day. They didn't have any sort of air purifier system in the room, so we're suspecting that that's how she got it. I did my best to really rest this time because the previous time I had COVID, I had to start moving a week after. I tried so hard to rest this time because the time previously, when I had COVID in 2023, I didn't really get to rest after the first week because I had a lease up from an apartment and had to move all of my stuff out. This time, though, at least for the first week, I didn't even go on my laptop, and I barely did anything but just lay in bed and listen to music, and that was about it. Prior to getting COVID that time, I was in the process of learning Gabriella from Cat's Eye, and while I was still sick, I very, very slowly was just doing the arm movements for one of the parts to make sure I wasn't losing it. And I immediately had to stop because I had so much heart pain and palpitations that That's not supposed to happen. A week later, I was no longer positive, but I was still doing pretty bad. I did have an appointment with my general practitioner who referred me over to cardiology. I do already have a cardiologist, but the cardiologist that I have was reaching a wall with me and not really sure what to do. So I figured it was a good idea to get a second opinion, and they ordered an echocardiogram, which still hasn't happened because there is such a long wait list. My appointment for it isn't until May. I have all these white hairs that have been coming in too that line up with exactly when I got COVID, which also happened to me in 2023. While I had COVID still, I also got hit really hard again with the pelvic floor dysfunction getting worse. I don't know what it is about getting COVID for me and my pelvic floor dysfunction, but oh my goodness, it's so bad. But yeah, that infection has really hit my dysautonomia hard, and my ME/CFS got worse again. I did have some improvement since then, but I was still worse than what my baseline was prior to that infection. After a while, I went back to singing again, but I went really slow about it because I started getting PEM from singing, which I did get from my previous infection, but it had gone away. That came back. I waited over a month before I went back to dancing, and I initially started with just doing arm movements laying in bed, and I very slowly progressed to being on my feet. I have noticed with certain dancing, especially more K-pop dances, that sometimes I'll have wheezing after I stop dancing, even if it's not even a minute long. It's so hard to figure out though because it changes completely day to day what's going to affect me and how it's going to bother me and how much I can handle even with the same exact dance. And I also notice that I don't typically get hit with symptoms until after I stop. So as I'm dancing, I can't tell. I have been experiencing wheezing with some other things too, such as with hanging laundry, or when I went up a very slight hill back in December. I would have taken my wheelchair that particular day if it was wheelchair accessible, but it was only about a minute of slight uphill. I didn't expect to be that bad. I have noticed in general that I get PEM a lot easier than I was prior to this infection. I have to section at least part of my day just laying in bed without any lights, without looking at my phone, even if I'm awake. Otherwise, I will get PEM just from the lights. I think I was starting to have issues with that prior to this infection. It just got worse, and I wasn't really experimenting with this so much prior. In November, I did start to get worse again with my ME/CFS and my MCAS. I'm not entirely certain as to why, but I did have anaphylaxis that I made the mistake of trying to push through a couple days before Thanksgiving, and I was already having a bad day with my dysautonomia. On Thanksgiving itself, I was dealing with a lot of stress and I had anaphylaxis again, so that didn't help. A lot happened in November though, too, because I started taking Japanese again, which I had not been doing since pre-COVID, which is really important for me to do. But I was initially getting PEM during my lessons with her. That has since gone away. I don't know if it's just because I'm more comfortable with her now. I believe it was November that I also started working with a new voice teacher, and it's very hit or miss whether or not I'll experience PEM from that. I'm more likely to if we're working on belting, since that seems to be harder on me physically. We also have been working a lot on technique stuff that I haven't ever touched before, so there's a lot more going into it. And if that wasn't enough, I switched to a new therapist in November too. My previous therapist wasn't working for me, and I was getting PEM literally every single appointment. I constantly felt like I was recovering from the previous week, and there's other reasons why I also had to stop working with him. I did start to get better again though in December, up until Christmas. I did have anaphylaxis Christmas morning and Christmas evening. I also randomly almost passed out while sitting at the table eating dinner Christmas evening. I'm not entirely certain as to why, but that was fun. Then came New Year's, which I did way too much. My wife and I made a log cake that I actually wanted to make all the way back for Thanksgiving, but it didn't happen because I didn't want to overdo myself, and I also just physically wasn't up for it. If you haven't made a log cake before, it's a lot of work. And then I also volunteered to make chicken pot pie for my entire family, so I did have help from my grandmother with that, but we made two, and I'm used to only making one, so that was too much for me. And then after that, in January, the air quality was terrible where I live, and even though we have air purifiers running in the house at all times, just from people going in and out of the house, I could smell that the air wasn't great, and I think that was affecting me because I am extremely sensitive to poor air quality, more than most people with my MCAS. I did feel better again once the air quality had improved, so I do think that was affecting me. Another important thing to mention is that I have had an ongoing mold issue in my bedroom at my parents' house that started in 2023, but it got noticeably worse end of December, and I do periodically try to clean off any excess mold that grows on the windowsills in my room, but after getting COVID, my wife and I couldn't really keep up with it until again in January, and it's worse than I have ever seen it before. I am aware that we need to just replace the windows, but we have to get everything out of our room first, which is more than I can handle right now. I do want to address something, which is that the reason why I think my wife and I kept getting sick in the beginning is because we used to wear a surgical mask underneath a KF94 that wasn't properly fitted. And you cannot get a proper seal with a surgical mask, but I didn't know better at the time. I didn't switch to a better fitted respirator until after I got COVID in 2023. I was still, even in 2024, being told to double mask with the surgicals by doctors in 2024, and I was having to correct them on that. I learned thanks to r/mask for all. And if I haven't mentioned this already, my wife works at the airport, and on top of that, she's not allowed to leave when she eats her lunch, and when she was at a lower position, she wasn't allowed to decide when she even took her lunch, so she was taking her lunch with other people in the break room. Now that she is a higher position, she's allowed to decide when she takes her lunch to a certain extent, so that's improved. It's still not perfect though, because she does still have to be inside. The other thing that was difficult is that with trying to find masks that fit us. A lot of them seem to be for someone who has a different sort of face shape. And the other thing is, most masks don't come in sizes small enough for me. I actually started wearing masks back in 2016, so it really did take way too long to figure this out. I do want to emphasize that if your only option is a mask that doesn't fit you properly, that is still better than nothing to not only protect yourself, but also protect other people. But if you have better options, then you should go with that. Also, I want to be transparent that I test whenever I think it's even just my health issues flaring, just to make sure. And most people I know, at least, don't test at all or barely test, so therefore they're going to have less positive tests. This video is already getting so long and I haven't even gotten into my experience with long COVID clinics yet, so I probably will turn that into a separate video, but I will briefly say that I did go to the Palo Alto Medical Foundation long COVID clinic. That was a group Zoom meeting back in 2022. And I also saw Stanford Long COVID Clinic in 2024. I did make videos about that on TikTok, but it's probably hard to search through. I was denied by Rhythm, which I had originally applied for in 2023 and didn't hear back until last year. I also got denied by UCSF in 2023, which my cardiologist had referred me to. She referred me again in 2024 as an urgent referral this time, and they told me that I wouldn't be hearing back until 2025 and that I would be put on a wait list then because they were just so incredibly overbooked. It is now 2 years later. I have heard nothing. Anyways, like I said, this video is getting so incredibly long. I apologize. This video was originally supposed to be a short form video. Yeah, I kind of failed at that. If you have made it this far, I really appreciate it. And if you want me to talk more on this topic, please let me know. And if there's any specifics, also let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to make a video about that. Also, if you leave any comments that are against masks or incorrect information about long COVID or telling me that long COVID isn't real or any of that stuff, I'm just going to delete your comment and block you, so don't waste your time. Most people who leave those kinds of comments, the way that they leave their comment is clear that they didn't even watch my video and have only looked at the title of my video or only watched the first couple seconds of my video and not even a minute into my video. So, yeah. Anyways, I will end the video here now. Thank you so much for watching and goodbye.